Hey everyone, pull up a chair and get comfortable. You're listening to James and Elena's English Chat. I'm James.
And I'm Elena. This is the podcast where we have a real conversation, so you can learn real English.
You know, Elena, I was looking at my new wall calendar this morning. It is completely empty. No meetings, no doctor appointments, no birthdays written in yet. There is something really magical about those blank squares, isn't there?
Oh, I completely agree. It feels like a blank slate. That is a common expression we use in English. It means a fresh starting point where anything is possible. It is a very hopeful feeling.
It really is. It reminds me of being a kid. I remember one year, I think I was 9 or 10, I saved all my pocket money to buy this incredibly fancy diary. It had a lock and a little silver key. I felt like a secret agent. On January 1st, I sat down at my desk and decided I was going to be the most organized person in the world. I wrote, Day 1, become a genius, in big, bold letters. But then I tried to eat a jam sandwich while writing. A huge piece of strawberry jam fell right in the middle of the page. I tried to wipe it off, but I just smeared it everywhere. My perfect year lasted about 10 minutes before it became a sticky mess.
That sounds like a classic James story. But you know, even with the jam, that feeling of excitement is so special. I used to have a similar tradition. Every year, I would visit this tiny, dusty bookstore in my hometown. It wasn't a modern shop. It smelled like old paper and wood. I would buy one beautiful notebook. I didn't want to write my chores in it. I wanted to write down every interesting thing I saw in nature. I remember sitting in the park for hours in the cold January air, waiting for a bird to do something interesting, just so I could start the first page.
That is much more poetic than my jam diary. But why do we feel this way? Why does the date on a calendar make us feel like we can change our whole lives? Why does that happen?
Well, psychologists actually have a name for it. They call it the fresh start effect. Our brains like to divide our lives into chapters. When a new year or even a new month starts, our brain thinks of it as a new chapter. It allows us to leave our old mistakes, like your jam sandwich accident, in the past chapter and focus on our new self in the current chapter.
That makes so much sense. It's like a reset button on a video game. I can forget that I was lazy in December and pretend I'm a marathon runner in January. Even if it's just for a few days, that fresh start feeling gives me a lot of energy.
Exactly. It is all about hope and the chance to try again. Today, we are going to dive deeper into this feeling and talk about how we can use it to stay motivated with our goals, especially with learning English.
You know, Elena, when I think about a fresh start, I immediately think of September. When I was a kid, the best part of school starting wasn't the lessons or seeing my friends, it was the stationery store. I remember standing there looking at all the empty notebooks.
Oh, I remember that feeling so well. The smell of new paper and the way the covers are so bright and shiny before they get thrown into a backpack. It feels like a world of possibilities.
Exactly. I would pick the most beautiful, thick notebook with white, smooth pages. I used to tell myself, this year, James, your handwriting will be like a work of art. I even bought a special blue pen just for that notebook. For the first 2 pages, it was perfect. Every letter was straight and tidy. But then, by page 5, there were ink stains everywhere, and I started drawing little monsters in the margins. I felt like I had ruined the magic.
That is a great example of what we call a clean slate. A slate is actually an old type of small blackboard that students used a long time ago. When you wash it, it becomes perfectly black again. In our minds, a new notebook or a new year acts like a mental boundary. It helps us separate our old self, the one who was messy or lazy, from our new self, who is organized and successful.
It's so true. It's like I was trying to leave the messy James of last year behind. But why do we love this feeling so much? Why do we keep buying new notebooks if we know we might get messy again?
Because it gives us a sense of control. I actually did something similar just last month, but not with school supplies. I decided to completely organize my kitchen cupboards. They were a total disaster. I had 3 bags of salt and 4 boxes of pasta that were all half empty. It was chaotic. I went out and bought matching glass jars and a little label maker.
A label maker? That sounds very professional, Elena.
It felt amazing. For that one afternoon, while I was putting my spices into neat little rows, I felt like a professional chef. Even though I accidentally burnt my toast the very next morning, Looking at those neat jars made me feel like I had a fresh start in my home life. Psychology experts say this fresh start effect actually helps us focus on our big goals because it reduces the weight of our past failures.
So the new notebook or the tidy kitchen isn't just about the objects themselves. It's about the hope that this time things will be different. It's a very powerful tool for motivation.
Precisely. For someone learning English, this is why starting a new course or even just a new vocabulary list feels so good. You aren't the person who forgot their verbs last week. You are the person who is starting fresh today. It's a psychological trick, but it's a very useful one if we know how to use it. I love that. It makes me feel better about my old notebooks full of monsters. It means I can always find a new clean slate whenever I need one.
But having a clean slate can also be a bit dangerous, right? Because sometimes I get a little too excited. I don't just want to start one new thing. I want to change my whole life in one day.
That is so true, James. It's what we call the trap of doing too much. When we feel that fresh energy, we think we are superheroes. We imagine our future self as someone who has infinite time and energy.
That was exactly me 2 years ago. I remember it perfectly. On January 1st, I decided I was going to be the ultimate James. I signed up for a full marathon. That's 42 kilometers, even though I could barely run to the end of my street without losing my breath.
Oh no, James. A marathon is a huge commitment. Did you stop there or was there more?
Oh, there was much more. I also decided I was going to be a polyglot, someone who speaks many languages. I bought books and apps for French, Japanese, and Italian. My plan was to study each language for 30 minutes every morning before going for a long run. I even bought a special Greek yogurt maker because I thought Ultimate James should make his own breakfast from scratch.
I can see where this is going. How long did the Ultimate James lifestyle actually last?
It was a disaster. The first week was okay, but I was exhausted. By the second week, I was waking up at 5 a.m., looking at my Japanese textbook and crying a little bit inside. By February, the running shoes were under the bed, the yogurt maker was in the garage, and the only Italian word I actually learned was pizza, which I was ordering every night because I was too tired to cook.
It's funny, but it's actually a very common psychological problem. We overestimate what we can do in a day, but we underestimate what we can do in a year if we just do a little bit every day. My friend Sarah did the same thing with gardening. She bought 50 different types of seeds, 3 different shovels, and fancy soil. 2 months later, her garden was just a very expensive patch of tall grass and weeds.
Exactly. I felt like a failure because I couldn't do all of it. But really, I just tried to climb a mountain in one jump. Why do our brains do that to us? Why do we think we can learn 3 languages at once?
It's because the idea of doing it feels good. Our brains get a hit of dopamine just from planning, but the doing is much harder. For English learners, this often happens when someone says, "I will study for 3 hours every night." That sounds great on paper, but after a long day at work or school, it's almost impossible to keep up.
So instead of being ultimate James and failing, I should have just been slightly better James and maybe just focused on one language or one short run?
Precisely. We have to make our goals bite-sized. That means small enough to eat in one bite. If you try to eat the whole cake at once, you'll get a stomach ache. If you take one small bite every day, eventually you finish the cake and you actually enjoyed it.
That makes so much sense, Elena. I definitely ate too much goal cake last year, and I think that's why I felt so sick of it by February. But even when I take small bites, sometimes the cake tastes like cardboard. You know, it's just boring. Like when I was 10 years old, my parents made me take piano lessons. I practiced for 20 minutes every single day because I had to, but I hated every second. I was just staring at the clock, waiting for it to end. It was a should goal, not a want goal.
Exactly. That is the secret ingredient we often forget: true motivation. If you don't have a strong why behind your goal, even the smallest steps feel like walking through deep mud. I had the exact same experience with Italian a few years ago. I decided to learn it just because I thought it sounded pretty. I bought the books and downloaded the apps, but I was so bored. I kept forgetting to practice because I didn't really care about the result. So how did you fix it? Did you find a better book or a more fun app?
Actually, it wasn't a book at all. My husband and I started planning a dream trip to Italy for our wedding anniversary. We decided to visit small, quiet villages in Tuscany instead of just the big cities. Suddenly, everything changed. My Italian lessons weren't about grammar anymore. They were about a dream.
I wasn't just studying, I was preparing to order fresh pasta in a tiny restaurant or ask a local for directions to a hidden vineyard.
That sounds incredible. So the boring study became a tool for a real adventure.
Precisely. Every morning, I didn't think, oh no, I have to study verbs. I thought, I want to talk to the baker in that village. When we finally got there, I remember standing in a sun-filled square in Florence. I overheard two elderly men talking about a local soccer match, and I understood them. I felt like I had a superpower. That spark is what makes a habit stay alive.
I really like that. It reminds me of my neighbor, Mr. Henderson. He's 80 years old, and he just started learning how to use a smartphone. I asked him why he was working so hard at it, and he told me it's because he wants to see daily photos of his new grandson in Australia. He isn't learning technology, he's learning family connection. His motivation is beautiful.
That is a perfect example, James. Mr. Henderson has a deep why. For our listeners, if your English practice feels like a chore, ask yourself, what is my Italy? Is it getting a better job? Is it making a friend from another country? Or is it finally understanding the lyrics to your favorite song? When you find that personal connection, the work becomes a joy.
I think I need to find my Italy for my running goal. Maybe instead of running to lose weight, I should run because I want to participate in that charity race for the local animal shelter next summer. Running to help dogs sounds way more fun than running to change a number on a scale.
I love that. When the why is strong, the how becomes much easier. You stop counting the minutes and start enjoying the journey. It changes the energy of your practice from a duty into a gift you are giving to yourself.
Exactly. But even with a great reason, I usually mess up because I try to do too much at once. I have this problem where I think I can change my whole life in 24 hours. Last summer, I decided I was going to be a DIY expert. I bought all these expensive tools to build a massive wooden shed for my garden in just one weekend. By Saturday afternoon, I was covered in sawdust, I had lost my hammer, and the shed looked more like a broken birdhouse. It was a disaster. I felt so defeated that I didn't touch a tool for months.
Oh, James, I think many people can relate to that. We think we need to make a giant leap, but really we just need a tiny step. I used to be the same way with my health. I would say, starting Monday, I'm going to the gym for 2 hours every single day. Of course, by Wednesday, I was too tired to move, so I would quit. Now I use the 5-minute rule. Every morning while the kettle is boiling for my tea, I do exactly 5 minutes of simple stretching in my kitchen.
Only 5 minutes? Does that really do anything? It sounds almost too easy to be helpful.
That is actually the secret. It is so easy that I can't say no to it. Even if I'm tired or busy, I can always find 5 minutes. I recently read a very famous book about habits. It explained that if you get just 1% better at something every day, you will be 37 times better by the end of 1 year. It is like putting a small amount of money in a bank account every day. Eventually, it grows into a huge amount of interest.
37 times better? That is a huge difference. I wish I had known that when I tried to learn the guitar a few years ago. I practiced for 3 hours on the first day. My fingers really hurt, and I got so frustrated that I never picked it up again. If I had just played for 10 minutes a day, I would probably be playing songs for you right now.
It's never too late to start small. My grandmother is a great example of this. She is 90 years old and still very sharp and quick. I asked her how she keeps her mind so active, and she told me she solves just one crossword puzzle every morning while she eats her breakfast. She has done this for over 50 years. It isn't a long, difficult study session. It's just a small, consistent habit that keeps her brain healthy.
That makes so much sense for our listeners who are learning English, too. I often hear people say, I'm going to study grammar for 5 hours this Sunday. But then Sunday comes and they want to watch a movie or hang out with friends, so they do nothing at all.
Precisely. Studying for 10 or 15 minutes every day is much more effective than studying for 5 hours once a week. Your brain needs that regular contact to remember new vocabulary. When we take these small steps, we don't feel overwhelmed or stressed. Instead, we feel successful. And feeling successful, even in a small way, makes us want to keep going the next day.
So instead of trying to run 5 kilometers tomorrow for the animal shelter, maybe I should just put on my running shoes and walk to the end of the street and back?
That is the perfect first step. Don't even worry about the running yet. Just get used to the habit of putting the shoes on and stepping outside. Once that feels easy, you can add another 5 minutes.
That sounds much less scary. But honestly, even if I have my shoes on, I sometimes feel a bit lonely out there by myself. I find that I give up more easily when no one is watching me.
That is very common, James. We are social creatures. Doing things alone is hard, But when we have a support system or a group of friends, everything changes. It's like having a secret engine that pushes you forward.
A secret engine? I like the sound of that. Tell me more. Have you ever joined a group to help you stay on track with a hobby?
I actually did last spring. I wanted to learn how to grow vegetables, but I was terrible at it. I kept forgetting to water my plants, and they all died. So I decided to join a local gardening club in my neighborhood.
A gardening club? That sounds very peaceful. But were you nervous? I would be worried that everyone there would be an expert and I would look silly.
I was very nervous. On the first day, I didn't even know the names of the tools. But the group was so kind. There was an older lady named Mrs. Higgins who had been gardening for 40 years. Instead of laughing at me, she gave me some of her special seeds and showed me exactly how deep to plant them.
That's lovely. So, did having Mrs. Higgins around make you more likely to actually go to the garden?
Yes, exactly. On rainy days, when I wanted to stay on the sofa and watch TV, I would think, oh, Mrs. Higgins is waiting for me. We plan to pull the weeds together today. I didn't want to let her down. That is called accountability. It means you feel responsible to someone else.
Accountability. That's a good word. I experienced something similar last month. I tried to fix a leaky pipe under my kitchen sink. I watched a video online, but I got confused and water started spraying everywhere. I was ready to just sit on the floor and cry.
Oh no, what did you do?
Well, my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, saw me through the window and came over with his toolbox. He didn't just fix it for me, he talked me through it. Now, every time I see him, he asks me if the sink is still dry. Because I know he's going to ask, I actually check under the sink every morning. It's like a little community check-in.
That is a perfect example. When we share our goals or our projects with others, they become part of our journey. It's much harder to quit when you have a friend cheering you on or waiting for you at the park or the garden.
So, for my running goal, I should probably find a running buddy, someone who will wait for me at the end of the street.
Definitely. Or even just a friend you text every morning to say, I did my 5-minute walk. Having someone say, well done, makes your brain feel very happy. It makes the habit feel like a celebration instead of a chore. Before we wrap up, let's look at a couple of interesting words we use today. I think these are really important for anyone learning a new skill, especially a language.
I'm ready. I've got my digital notebook open. What is the first one on the list?
The first word is consistency. Can you say that with me? Consistency.
Consistency. It sounds very professional, like something a boss would say in a big meeting.
It is used in business, but it's very personal too. Consistency means doing the same thing regularly over a long period of time. It's about not stopping. For example, last year I really wanted to improve my cooking. I was tired of eating cereal for dinner. So I decided that every Tuesday night was my kitchen night.
Every Tuesday? Even when you were busy?
Yes, that's the point. Even if I was tired or had a lot of work, I forced myself to cook something small, like a simple vegetable soup or a basic pasta. I didn't try to be a professional chef. I just made sure I did it every single Tuesday. That is consistency. It isn't about doing something perfectly. It's about showing up every time.
That makes sense. I have a problem with that. Last month, I decided to fix the broken fence in my garden. I worked really hard for 5 hours on a Saturday. I was so proud. But then I didn't touch it again for 3 weeks. Now half the fence is beautiful and the other half is falling down. I guess I lacked consistency.
Exactly. If you had worked on it for just 15 minutes every day, it would probably be finished by now. And that leads us to our second word, momentum.
Momentum. I remember that from science class. It's about things moving, right?
Right. In daily life, momentum is the strength or force you get when you have already started doing something. Think of a heavy bicycle. The first few seconds of pedaling are really hard. You have to push with all your strength. But once the wheels start turning, the bike gets easier to move. That speed and ease is momentum.
I feel that when I'm cleaning my house. I hate starting. I'll sit on the sofa for an hour thinking about the dirty dishes. But once I wash one plate, I think, well, I might as well wash the spoons. Then I clean the table. Suddenly, I'm cleaning the windows. Is that momentum?
Perfect. That is exactly what momentum feels like. When I was cooking every Tuesday, the first month was a struggle. I had to look at the recipe every 2 seconds, and I felt very slow. But by the third month, I had momentum. I didn't have to think so hard. My hands just knew what to do with the knife and the pans. It felt natural because I had built up that energy.
So consistency builds the momentum. If I keep doing my 5-minute English listening every day, eventually it will feel easy because I'll have that rolling bike feeling.
You've got it. Now, James, let's practice.
Can you give me a sentence using consistency?
Okay, let me try. Because of my consistency in feeding the neighborhood cat, he now waits at my front door every morning at exactly 7 o'clock.
That's a brilliant example. The cat definitely appreciates your consistency. Now, what about momentum?
After I wrote the first sentence of my English essay, I gained momentum and finished the whole page in 20 minutes.
Excellent. Those are two very useful words for our listeners to remember.
It really is. You know, Elena, talking about momentum and consistency reminds me of a little disaster I had last summer. I decided I was going to be a master gardener. I bought all these fancy pots and expensive tomato seeds. I was so excited for the first 3 days. I even named the plants. But then I got busy with work and completely forgot about them. When I finally went out to the balcony a week later, the plants looked like dry brown sticks. I felt so silly and wanted to throw the pots away and give up on gardening forever.
Oh no, poor James. I can imagine you standing there looking at your dry sticks. What did you do?
Well, my neighbor, a very kind lady named Mrs. Higgins, saw me looking sad from her window. She called out, "James, plants are like people. They don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to show up." She told me that I didn't fail at gardening. I just had a bad week. She gave me a new little plant and told me to start again that very minute. It taught me that a mistake doesn't mean the end of the journey. It's just a chance for a fresh start.
I love that. Show up. That is so important for English learners too. I had a similar experience with a personal habit I was trying to build. I wanted to start walking for 30 minutes every evening after dinner. One night it rained, and I used it as an excuse to stop for 2 whole weeks. I felt like I had ruined all my progress. But then I read an article about how every morning is a clean slate. I realized that the past 2 weeks didn't matter as much as what I did that night. So I put on my raincoat and went for a short walk. It wasn't 30 minutes, but it was a start.
That's the spirit. So if our listeners missed their study time yesterday, or if they felt frustrated because they couldn't find the right word in a conversation today, it's okay, right?
Absolutely. Don't look back at the days you missed with sadness. Look at the opportunity you have right now. Use the words we learned today, consistency and momentum, and just take one small step. Maybe that step is just listening to one more of our episodes, or writing one single sentence in your English journal before you go to sleep.
That's great advice, Elena. Every single day is a new opportunity to improve. We are so happy to be part of your daily routine and your journey to learning English.
We really are. You are doing a wonderful job, and we believe in you. Just keep showing up.
If you enjoyed James and Elena's English chat, please make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to learn with us every day.
And hey, if you have a second, leave us a comment. It really helps other learners find the show.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Speak to you soon. Goodbye.